Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, everyone, depending where you're joining us from. My name is Gabby Hart. I'm a Publishing Development Manager here at Emerald Publishing. And welcome to this webinar, Education Under Threat, Is Innovation the Key to Resilience? If you could write in the chat box where you're joining us from today, that would be really helpful. And maybe if you want to include how you heard about the session, that would be really great. I'm going to take just a couple of minutes before we kick off on the session to talk a little bit about what to expect today, and then touch very quickly on some work that we're doing at Emerald on our education portfolio, and I will pass over to the panelists very quickly, very shortly even. So firstly, I would like to thank HETL for their collaboration on this session. HETL are the International Higher Education Teaching and Learning Association, and Emerald and HETL have worked together quite closely for many years now, and we've got this webinar series with them. And I'd like in particular to thank Professor Abhilasha Singh, who will be moderating the session today. I'll introduce her in just a second. As well as Patrick Messenger, the founder of HETL, for his support and promotion of this session. I'd also like to thank the panelists for their time today. A lot of work has gone into arranging the session with time zones and all I know they're all very busy people, so thank you so much. And then I'm just going to share my screen very quickly, if I can, and I'm just going to talk through a few different ways that you can get involved in working with Emerald. So bear with me, hopefully you can see that. So as mentioned, yeah, my name is Gabby Hart. My email address is there, so if there is anything that you're interested in kind of working with me on, please do feel free to reach out after the session. There are a few journals that I wanted to highlight today. So again, if this is something that any of you are interested in being involved in, please do contact me. So we're looking for reviewers, authors, special issue proposals, for a number of these journals, and we're also open to new journal launches. So again, if there is an area within education that you feel could potentially work as a new journal that isn't kind of established elsewhere, please do get in touch. So just to highlight a couple of the journals, I've got Quality Education for All, so named after the Sustainable Development Goal of the same name. This publishes any content to kind of support access and equity in education. I have Artificial Intelligence in Education, which covers AI in all kind of levels and disciplines of education. Education Innovations, Systems and Future Learning, which publishes content advancing innovations in education. One of the panelists today, Maxwell, is one of the editors-in-chief of that journal as well. He's joining us in a wider capacity. But again, I'm sure me and Maxwell would be happy for you to reach out to us after this. And then finally, Responsible Enterprise Pedagogy, which covers enterprise and entrepreneurship education. And then I've also linked here to our wider Emerald education journals and our books portfolio. So again, if you're interested in accessing any of our titles or writing in one of our journals or a book, please do reach out. Brilliant. So then I will introduce Professor Abhi Singh, and we'll pass over to her shortly to actually get the panel started. So, Professor Abhilasha Singh is the Dean and Professor of HR and OB at the American University in the Emirates. He's a seasoned academic leader who has held several senior academic administrative positions, including President, Provost, and Vice President for Academic Affairs. A certified reviewer for the UAE's Commission for Academic Accreditation, and he is committed to quality education, outcome-based learning, and continuous improvement. He has received prestigious honours such as the Hind Ratan and Most Influential Woman by Filmfare Emmy. He is a prolific researcher and a Q1 journal editor, and serves on HETL's executive board and has secured many research grants, including from the Dubai Future Foundation and UAE National Research Foundation. And I will pass over to Professor Singh now to kick off the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gabi, and a warm welcome to everyone joining us from around the world. I was listening to Gabi very carefully. Let me begin with a short story. So there was a school in a remote region, and the school lost power for weeks due to conflict. So classes could not run, teachers could not gather students, and learning seemed impossible. But instead of giving up, the teachers repurposed the neighborhood courtyards as classrooms. They used chalk on walls as whiteboards, and the students shared handwritten copies of lessons. When asked why they kept going, one teacher said, because education is the only thing that conflict cannot steal once it enters the mind. Now that story has stayed with me because it captures the heart of today's session. Education is under threat, but it is also deeply resilient. And innovation, when grounded in equity and humanity, is one of the greatest tools for that resilience. As introduced, my name is Professor Abhilasha Singh. I'm the Dean of College of Business Administration at American University in the Emirates. We are located in Dubai, and we offer a great portfolio of undergraduate and graduate programs. I also have the honor of serving as an executive board member of HETL, Higher Education Teaching and Learning Association. And at American University in the Emirates, I work extensively on aligning the higher education with national development goals, employability priorities, and sustainable innovation. And through HETL, I have the privilege of collaborating with leaders, educators, and researchers like all of you, shaping the global educational landscape. I also want to acknowledge our strong partnership with Emirates. Gabi already mentioned that through the Q1 Quartile 1 Journal JARE, the Journal of Applied Research in Higher Education. And this journal has been a platform that exemplifies our shared commitment to advancing innovative, evidence-based, and globally impactful educational practice. So we are truly grateful for this collaboration. But before we begin, I want to recognize someone whose vision made this global network possible. His name is Professor Patrick Blessinger. He's the founder of HETL. And Patrick is not only a good friend, he's a great scholar and thinker. He's a connector, someone who has built bridges across continents, disciplines, and education systems. His work always reminds me that innovation is not only technological, it is relational. It is the courage to imagine better futures together. So HETL continues to foster that spirit through its research initiatives, through its publications, practitioner exchanges, and global conferences. And I'm delighted to share that our next HETL International Conference will take place in Dubai in collaboration with Middlesex University, and we warmly invite all of you to join us there. Now, I'm thrilled to introduce our distinguished panelists, each bringing a powerful lens to the question of resilience in education. We have Alice Meadows. Alice has many years of experience working in scholarly publishing and scholarly communication. She's a co-founder of MoreBrains, Cooperative, a small consultancy specializing in scholarly communication and research infrastructure. And for this webinar, she is going to speak primarily from her perspective as a co-founder of the Declaration to Defend Research Against US Government Censorship, which has about 5,000 individuals, I think, and organizational signatories, including Emirates. So she reminds us that safeguarding scholarship is essential to safeguarding society. We have Professor Catherine Lee. She's a PVC, the Pro Vice Chancellor and Dean of the Faculty of Arts, Humanities, Education, and Social Sciences at Anglia Ruskin University in Cambridge. She has published extensively on the theme of inclusion in education. And her own experiences as a teacher under the homophobic law, Section 28, inspired the BAFTA-nominated feature film Blue Jean. In 23, if I'm not wrong, Catherine received an MBE for services to equality in education. Catherine champions inclusive pedagogy and equity-centered innovation. Her voice is vital in ensuring that new models of learning uplift rather than divide. We have Professor Maxwell Ho. Maxwell Ho is he's an assistant professor and he works in the Department of Education Policy and Leadership, and associate co-director of the Academy for Education, Development and Innovation at the Education University of Hong Kong. He's co-editor, editor-in-chief of Emirates' newly launched Education Innovation, Systems and Future Learning Journal. He has received multiple awards, including the 2021 Emerald Young Researcher Award and 23 Michael Phelan Emerging Scholar Award. Maxwell examines how education systems negotiate the delicate balance between heritage, identity, and modern transformation. It's a question many nations are really at this point of time wrestling with today. We have Dr. Juliet as well. Juliet is a research associate at the Institute of Development Studies and coordinator of Realliance, a UK-based network supporting regenerative response to climate and conflict displacement. She brings profound experience from conflict-affected regions where resilience is not a theory, it's a survival. She has been involved with peace hubs in many countries, including Rwanda, Colombia, Syria, and she has written on different roles universities have played in conflict response. We are honored to have each one of you here. Let's begin by grounding ourselves in context. So what does education under threat mean in your region or your field? And what do you see as the most pressing challenges today? And I will invite each one of you to share briefly, starting with Alice.
Thank you, Professor Singh, and hi everybody, it's lovely to be here. Despite my accent, I'm actually based in Boston, Massachusetts, so it's a bit early morning, so apologies if I'm a little sluggish, but I have had my first cup of tea. So this is a kind of almost never-ending question to answer at the moment. Here in the US, which is mostly the kind of lens I'm going to be speaking from today. This last year has been pretty horrendous across the board, but education and higher education in particular have been very badly impacted. So as Professor Singh mentioned, mostly I'm going to be talking about concerns around censorship and academic freedom, which I think are a huge threat to all levels of education. But of course, there are a number of others, and I'm just going to quickly list them as to acknowledge at least some of the other things that I'm aware of that we should be concerned about. So obviously, in addition to censorship, there are all sorts of other attacks on research and education here in the US at the moment, including attacks on what gets published, who publishes it. Universities, research institutes, people are unable to have their continue on their clinical trials because they're being defunded. So a lot of issues there. I think there's also here a real disconnect between university leadership and how they're dealing with the Trump administration and how faculty, and in many cases students, want to and think they should be dealing with it. So the faculty at an individual and collective level are being really powerful and really fighting, but the leadership in many cases is really not fighting back, which I think is a concern. I think there's a real risk of individual departments are already being eliminated or drastically reduced, and I know that's the case certainly in the UK as well. So in the humanities in particular, there's some very disturbing things happening in terms of whole departments closing down. Rising tuition costs are a huge deal over here. Again, not so sure about the rest of the world. And here it's a double whammy because there are also increasing restrictions on international students who otherwise would, perhaps help sort of make up that balance. And then I think there's sort of more existential issues around things like research integrity and how you can make sure that the research that's being conducted in universities is done so ethically and properly, and then how you carry that on through the system as far as publication is concerned. And that, I think, is connected with the increasing administrative burden on researchers who have to spend as much, if not more, of their time on admin work as they do on research and teaching. So not an exhaustive list, but a little bit of a laundry list of the things that concern me today about higher education in particular.
Okay, Catherine.
Thank you, and I'm going to be speaking in the UK context predominantly because that's where I'm based, but Alice, much of what you said resonated with me, and I think it's well documented that where the US leads, the UK soon follows, and some of the things that you're experiencing and describing there, very much apparent here in the UK. We've got the rise of the Reform political party led by Nigel Farage, who's a huge Trump supporter, and a real sort of right-wing agenda that's been badged as kind of anti-woke, and making it really challenging for those of us that do work around any form of equality, diversity, inclusion, really challenging. So we're seeing in the UK in schools and universities that those deep-rooted inequalities, as time goes on, are actually being harder. They're harder to close. We've got stubborn awarding gaps, where we've got young people from low-income backgrounds, those in school on free school meals, those who are disabled or have additional needs. Only 30% on average of those students go on to higher education, compared with 60% of their more advantaged peers. My particular area of expertise in research is around the experiences of LGBT young people, and data suggests that there's nearly a quarter of LGBT young people are at risk of leaving school early, and are more likely to have mental health difficulties than they are of their sort of heterosexual and cisgendered peers. And that polarization that we're seeing and that Alice has described in the US is really making it so difficult for teachers and lecturers to give the help, the support, the protection that young people need. So this is very much a politicized kind of position. The people that are suffering are the young people.
Okay, thank you. What about you, Juliet?
Professor Singh, thanks to Catherine and Alice. I think I'm going to echo some of what you said, but perhaps with a slightly different focus. I work globally, so I'm not talking about a particular region, but I am going to talk about higher education, which is the context in which I work. And currently, HE is under a huge threat from conflict, but also from co-option, and I don't see these as unrelated challenges. In the 1970s, Paulo Freire talked about education for liberation or education for domestication, but I think in the first half of the 21st century, what we see is education for liberation or for commercialization. Currently in Gaza, Ukraine, Myanmar, we see this on our screens regularly. Universities are being targeted with with buildings bombs and academics and students killed. In a policy, I think, of what we have to call scholasticide. But in Afghanistan, women are also prevented from studying, and in Nigeria, Boko Haram are kidnapping girls, both to stop the spread of what they see as bad Western education, and all of them feeling liberation, I think, from a dominant ideology. This year on the BBC's Reith Lectures, Rutger Bremen described in the West how university applicants often come with beautiful aspirations to solve global problems across the world, but by the time they graduate have been shifted towards applying for jobs in large corporations, many of whom invest in the arms trade and who are behind policies of scholasticide. Bremen, and I want to quote him, talks about a huge waste of talent, as our best minds aren't building startups or solving real world problems, but advising on tax avoidance or designing adverts for handbags.
So thank you. Professor Maxwell.
Oh, thank you. I prepared an answer for this question a week ago, but I guess most of you know the situation in Hong Kong about the fatal fire recently. Today is almost around 200 dead from that fire. And then before that, I think about Trump, because Trump really influencing the Hong Kong research collaboration with the US colleagues. I also think about the funding issues in Hong Kong because of the economic downturns in Hong Kong. We are facing the funding cut in Hong Kong that we are losing money, and then we cannot hire assistant for the research. But when we face a fatal fire in Hong Kong, it's quite out of my expectation, because Hong Kong is really safe. We seldom face the fatal tragedies, even the typhoon. We are very safe, but and we are well trained. We have a very different kind of protocol, very good system, and then teachers are well trained. We thought that we are well prepared, but our universities is located in the same district. We just so close to the fatal fire sites. And then what we notice is that although most of the school campus are fine in that district, but turn out some kids lost their parents. And then even the campus that are out of service, they don't have campus for the lesson. And then I initiate in our universities with my president, we want a temporary campus for those primary school. And then actually, I think what the education under threat means to me right now is about the student well-beings. We asked the student to draw pictures. And then I saw some students draw the fire. In the past 4 days, they drew the similar pictures to us. We really worry about it. And then we thought all teachers, even scholars, we think we are well prepared to help them, but turn out we find that we are human. We are not that well prepared. And then that's also related to the
Okay, thank you for those powerful reflections. I mean, what we have heard so far is so it's not only just about the systems under pressure, it's about people navigating uncertainty, institutions operating under constraint, and knowledge itself is being challenged. And that brings us to a deeper layer of this issue, which is sometimes political interference. Alice, you have worked a lot on political interference, censorship, defunding, restrictions on academic freedom. How do you see political interference such as, restrictions and censorship on academic freedom impacting the resilience of education system? I mean, how can innovation help counter or navigate these challenges?
Thank you. I mean, again, this is a huge question. And again, I'm going to answer primarily with a sort of US hat on, but to Catherine's point, not just where the US goes, the UK follows, it has been at least true around the world, really. So you won't be surprised, I do think censorship and threats to academic freedom are a huge challenge. And part of what I think is a challenge here is that it's not just about the here and now, it's about the trouble that we're brewing up for ourselves in the future, which I'll come back to in a minute. But I think some examples of the kind of issues that we're going to have to grapple with are the banned words and phrases thing. There's a list, PEN America has been keeping a list, I think there's about 1,000 of them now. They include ridiculous things like women, diversity, peanut allergies, many of which are absolutely critical for scientific reasons, never mind for kind of ethical reasons. Interestingly, the one word you won't find on there is men, unless it's qualified by something like black men or men who have sex with other men. So, there's a massive, the whole sort of woke thing is actually incredibly damaging to both research and education, I think, and as you eloquently said, Catherine. Yeah. I think the whole issues around databases going dark or being altered. One of the most worrying things to me is the sort of combination of both anticipatory compliance and self-censorship, which I think is happening a lot and which is incredibly dangerous because, again, you're storing up so many problems, not just now, but in the future. It's all exacerbated by defunding. As I mentioned, there are people who are literally dying because the clinical trials they were on have been discontinued because, oh my God, they happen to mention the word women in them or whatever. Researchers are losing their jobs or not being able to continue their work. And there's a massive impact there on not just the people they directly serve, like their patients, but also the communities that serve them, who depend on the universities and other educational institutes for their livelihoods. And I think, again, looking to the future, early career researchers are massively being affected by this, both in terms of not having jobs or deciding this isn't something they want to do, or moving overseas. And honestly, who can blame them? I went to a Stand Up for Science rally a few months ago here in Boston, and one of the speakers, who was themselves a young scientist, said, "We are losing an entire generation of scientists because of this." So I think, there's huge problems, and again, it's not just the here and now, and it's the future. So how are we going to fix this? I think there are huge risks to resilience and sustainability looking forward. I do think there are some opportunities for innovation to help with this. I think, it's not like the system was perfect before, so we do have an opportunity to build back better when the time comes, and I very much hope that people are already starting to think about that. With my sort of research infrastructure hat on, I do think that a really robust, sustainable, open research infrastructure that's open to everybody equitably and everybody helps to develop, would be very, very important in this. I think there are lots of opportunities around new ways to publish. Again, that's where I'm sort of coming from, rather than the education part of it, the output part of it. I think, there are new formats that we can publish in. There are new business models that will support more equitable access, not just in the US, but around the world. And absolutely, I think we're going to have some policy and legal changes to prevent this sort of thing from ever happening again. It's a bit of a wish list, and possibly a not very realistic wish list, but that's my hope anyway.
Yeah, but it is a wish list, yes, as you said. So, I mean, the threat to education is not only external, it could be very systematic, it can be very political at the same time. Let me direct my question to Catherine. Catherine, innovation can be empowering as well, but it also widens inequalities, especially when it comes to digital divides. So how do we ensure innovation becomes a tool for equity rather than exclusion?
Yeah, thanks, Abby. Yeah, I mean, to counter that sort of anti-woke narrative, when we get inclusion right in education, it's good for everybody. It's not good just for those that have got additional needs or disabilities. It's good for everyone. So inclusive practice should be our absolute entry point. And for me, I think all of us in education, whether that's working in schools or universities, there's a commitment that we've got to have, and it's fourfold. And the first is access. We should not be expecting our students to use tools until they are rolled out for absolutely everybody, and they can be used safely and reliably, and they're not just for those people that have got that access at home. And sometimes we are guilty of making some huge assumptions about what access young people have got. I've known students get to the third year of a degree and actually only been able to access a mobile phone. We make assumptions, and there's such a lot of digital poverty out there. The second commitment is accessibility. We can do so much now with digital devices, with AI, and we've got to ensure that there's investment in education. Schools in the UK have been starved of funding with successive governments now, and there are such a fantastic array of tools out there to support young people. We need to be making the most of them. The third commitment for me is voice. Do you know what? If we want to support young people and promote equity in education, let's ask them. We spend so long guessing what students might need, what students want, and nowhere near often enough do we actually sit down round the table with students and go, what would make life better for you? What would make life easier? And actually, when we do that, sometimes the answers can surprise us. And then the other thing to say is we've got to protect young people online. We're great at protecting young people in the physical world, but we have got to teach them how to navigate the online world really safely and also with integrity. So those keyboard warriors that that we see are actually, that we're teaching our young people that to behave like that, they wouldn't behave like that in the street. So why should they behave like that online? So yeah, 4 basic things I think we need to try and get right. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, one thing which is so critical, which you mentioned, that let us not assume, let us ask. So, and that is really very important. And I agree that innovation without equity is not innovation at all. It is exclusion, let's say. Juliet, you work very closely with education in conflict-affected environments. Can you share examples where innovation enabled education system to adapt, to survive, or to rebuild?
Ms. Abby, in the little story you gave in your introduction, you talked about school teachers using innovative approaches, and there's a huge number of examples of this also in universities. But there's also examples of communities helping universities to survive and universities helping communities to survive. So I'm going to cite a couple of examples of both there. At the UCFI conference this year, Professor Ahmed Janina gave the keynote speaking from Gaza, talking about the innovation of lecturers who are determined to contribute, to continue teaching, to contribute to what they saw as offering hope to students after all 12 of Gaza's universities had been reduced to rubble. And he saw this as part of samud, or an attitude of resilience. And when online structures failed, and we perfected online teaching during COVID, but these don't always work in complex situations when electricity goes down, when networks go down. So teachers were using WhatsApp messages, taking photographs of assignments and trying to mark them, setting up study groups in shelters, peer learning circles, mentoring circles, whatever they could do to keep education going. And it's not just in Gaza that this has happened. In Myanmar, between 2010 and 2015, when universities were closed, students set up alternative structures themselves, working through non-formal education centres, trying to teach each other. And then later on, when, as part of civil resistance, universities closed again in the 2020s, when they reopened, those who'd been part of the civil resistance movement were forbidden from entering. And so they set up alternative universities, which were supported by the diaspora, by people from outside European university organizations, the Universities in Exile, Consortia, Endangered Scholars Worldwide, helped to set up structures for separate universities for those who'd been forbidden to enter the state universities, and to offer a different kind of education for civic-minded people rather than this, what they saw as the education for domestication that the state was offering. In Syria too, after 2011, those who resisted the Assad regime were sent into exile in the northwest. And again, the international community helped to support with the diaspora and with those in the northwest to set up new universities. And I've been myself a part of this. And then when the Assad regime finally fell and scholars could meet each other again, those who'd been in exile found that actually the level of research and teaching they were able to offer had been better than those who'd remained in regime protected areas. But yes, also examples of universities contributing to state recovery after conflict. My colleague and friend Samson Milton writes of the neglected pillars of recovery that higher education can offer. Because higher education is, of course, a microcosm. It has skilled people from almost every discipline area who can provide services when states fail, but also contribute significantly to post-conflict reconstruction and peace building. Colleagues in Syria are looking into this at the moment, and colleagues I've worked with in Ukraine and in Bosnia have set up peace hubs to deal with the social and emotional toll of war, and also to design new forms of formal education for the next generation. So I think universities and communities working together can be part of the solution.
Yes, yes. And I mean, Juliet, your examples clearly shows that resilience in its, I can say, in the rawest form, where creativity becomes the infrastructure. So thank you for sharing those examples. Thank you. Maxwell, many education systems are anchored in tradition. So how do we find a balance between respecting heritage and at the same time embracing innovation?
It is a really good question. Throughout my research, and then I believe that it is about what is the core values of our education. I'm pretty sure that it's about the human touch, right? It's about how do we going to communicate? How do we going to nurture our kids? It's about nurturing their character, empathy, critical thinking, all of these stuff. And then when we talk about innovation, many people will think about it, okay, they must have some creative ideas that are going to deliver the teaching content in an innovative way, creative way, and very attractive. And then let me take the examples that for the fatal fire, okay? Because of the fatal fire, many people suggest schools that use the Zoom to teach. They say that, oh, Zoom is a very useful tool. And then nowadays, there's so many AI support, and then you can some fun games to play with your student, and then they will be fine. Don't worry. But we know that I know this is innovation, but at the same time, the core of the education is about human touch. As I mentioned, that now we are worrying about the student well-beings. Their well-being is our first priorities, and then. So I believe that it's about, we are not going to use the innovation to change our tradition. It's about preserve our traditional values in teaching our kids. But at the same time, move at a human pace. Try to leave some time for the teachers and the student to adapt and reflect how to use these kind of innovative pedagogies or tools, or even in the whole system, slowly, okay, not very fast, okay. Although entrepreneurship also always talk about a radical change, but from my point of view, it's about the readiness. If we wanted to balance tradition and innovation, we had to make sure we understand our core values, then try to think about how innovation can adapt it to that, and then with different form of pedagogies or anything else, and then to make sure that we teach and to let the innovation extend how we teach. Yeah.
Thank you, thank you. Maxwell, your reflection brings a very important reminder for all of us. Innovation succeeds when it honors the identity rather than erases it, because you repeatedly mentioned human touch, and that is really so important. Catherine, I would like to come back to you here, because this part of the conversation feels deeply connected to your work, I can say. So we often talk about policies, system, technology, funding, but at the heart of it, all are educators themselves. So let me ask you, in your view, what role should educators play in shaping a resilient education system? If briefly you can touch on it.
I will, and I was nodding along to everything that Maxwell was saying there, because it really resonated with me. Look, you know, we know, don't we, it's an old adage, we're all at our best when we can be ourselves. And so I think that teachers, lecturers have got a really central role to play in building education resilience, because it's about us creating environments where learners belong, feel safe, and relationships are built. We can't create resilience through structures alone. This is an enduring piece of work that we've got to keep doing. It's not something that we can introduce as an intervention or an innovation. And you know, we know there's been quite a bit of research done in student belonging in universities in the UK, and we know from the data that the outcomes for those students improve when they feel seen, supported, respected, and when they feel that they belong in their university. So, you know, we've got a job to do, I think, to ensure that, as a basic, again, we've got inclusive classroom cultures, we've got inclusive university and school cultures, that our relationships with the learners are strong enough that we can spot early on, you know, signs of disengagement, of not, you know, of barriers essentially. And this needs to become day to day. It needs to become commonplace. And you know, part of, well, return where I started really, this woke agenda that, oh, you know, we shouldn't be pandering to students with additional needs. We shouldn't be, you know, we shouldn't be encouraging those that have got LGBTQ plus identities to be themselves. Absolutely not. You know, we need to create places where our students feel safe and where they can bring their whole selves to their learning experience.
Yeah. Thank you, Catherine. I mean, I agree that resilience cannot be created through a structure. You clearly highlight how agency and empowerment are just as important as tools and infrastructure. And that leads perfectly into the next dimension. Maxwell, I would like to turn to you again now. We know that educators are often expected to carry so much, like adapting curricula, supporting students, absorbing change, and sometimes doing all of this in environments marked by uncertainty or crisis. So the question is, how can educators stay motivated and supported when the landscape keeps shifting beneath their feet?
Yeah, thank you. I believe that there are so many ways that to ask Fulham, he will talk about educational change, and then if you talk to Hargreaves, he will say that, okay, leading from the middle, and then we all know what did they say. But from my point of view, it's about we need some entrepreneurial teachers. It is because in Hong Kong, I find that those teachers with the entrepreneurial spirit, most likely they have a very clear mission. Somehow their mission may not align with their school, but at least their mission is going to the student. They really care about their student. That's why they come up with a clear mission for teaching career. And then they will embrace some new form of teaching, but also they preserve the education values. And then they may adapt different kind of technology, but at the same time, they will promote it, share it. Not going to ask people to use it. It's about going to share what they learned, encouraging people to use things that they use. And then they will expand their network, just like the entrepreneur, that they expand the network to the outsider, to the community, and then bring those resources back to their school, and then to share with their colleagues. And turn out going to help their colleagues to arouse their curiosities about the innovative teaching, and then to adopt the new practice. And this is what we find in Hong Kong. And I believe that one of the solution, and then the way that we're going to face the consistent change, because I'm pretty sure that honestly in Hong Kong there's so many education reforms since I studied in the primary school. So many changes. Years have a new idea, and all teachers say that's enough. And even when I was secondary school teachers, I faced free education reform in 9 years. And then so from my experience, I think that entrepreneurial spirit is one of the way that to ensure teachers will engage in change.
So rightly mentioned, entrepreneurial skill, but such an important reminder, because resilience isn't about the systems surviving, but about people feeling seen, supported, sustained. Let me, looking ahead, I would like to go back to Alice. Alice, when we think about the next decade, education feels like it's standing at a crossroad between artificial intelligence, new learning ecosystems, new models of credentialing, and shifting expectations from society. So from where you sit, what emerging innovations do you believe will shape the future of education in the years ahead?
I'm going to answer this in a slightly different way, if you don't mind, because I have a slightly different question in front of me. So what I wanted to say at this point is less about any specific form of innovation and more about what I think needs to be in place in order for any innovation really to be successful. So there are a number of things I think we should take into account. It's very rare for any of them, in my experience, to get taken into account really, and I don't know of any examples where all of them get taken into account. So I think really importantly, there's no one size fits all, and that applies across different disciplines, different communities, different regions, different types of institution. And what that means is that in order for an innovation to be successful, everybody needs to be represented in its development and everybody needs to have equitable access to that innovation. It's one of those, if we only succeed if everybody succeeds, if anybody's failing, then we're all failing kind of things. I think a really important part of that is standards, making sure that the standards are in place to ensure that this doesn't just work on one type of device or in one sort of community, but everybody can benefit from it. I think transparency is really important in terms of both the process and the access and the innovation itself. I think training, and that ties back in with standards, making sure that people are trained in an equitable and appropriate way for their situation, which again, there's no one size fits all on that. And I really think in my part of the world, which is more the sort of higher education research space, that research integrity is something that needs to be taken into account much more, and from the very start of the process, not just at the end. At the moment, many innovations are happening in my space around the publishing part of the process, where research integrity issues like paper mills and plagiarism and things like that get picked up as part of the publishing process, but actually that rigor needs to start, I think, within the universities. I think of universities, and this kind of ties in what I think everybody else is saying, that that there's a real role to play in educational institutes themselves with making sure that people are educated and trained in the right way, so that they know what the right thing is, they know how to do the right thing, and it's easy for them to do the right thing, whether that's around inclusivity or rigor or whatever it might be. So I'm sorry, I didn't quite answer your question as you asked it, but those are that I think should be
fascinating. You raised so many points, and it really opens up the idea that the future of education is going to be more distributed, more digital, and hopefully more democratic, and speaking about the community. So Juliet, I would like to come back to you. I'm a little mindful of time as well. And I would like, especially the audience, if you have any questions, please, you can put your questions in the chat box. Juliet, given your work, in very fragile and conflict-affected regions, we know that when systems are destabilized, communities, they often become the backbone of continuity and recovery, and that was my opening story. So my question is, what kinds of community university partnerships or collaborations are most effective in conflict affected regions, and how can they support resilience? Juliet, we cannot hear you.
Thank you. I spoke earlier about education for liberation or education for commercialization, and the importance of allowing and enabling, and I think both are the case, our academics and our initially enthusiastic young people to work on real world problems. And I think the examples I gave of universities being able to continue in conflict contexts and being able to support recovery are often because of the links that academics have, both globally across their discipline areas, but also locally in connecting their families, neighbours and friends, as well as needing to survive and thrive in really difficult contexts. Academics and universities are often rooted in places that international responders in times of conflict and crisis are unable to reach. And it's this bringing together of academia with real world issues that I think is at the basis of effective community partnerships, where scholarship is seen as being in service of the community and the locality rather than removed from it. And in these times of escalating conflict and crisis, we need this more than ever before. But if they're to be effective, such partnerships have to be rooted in local need and context. A little like Alice said, one size doesn't fit all. They have to respond and build on the context that they are based in, and to take abstract knowledge and apply it in that context, but also by acknowledging the equal status of local knowledge and contextual solutions. And in recent years, so-called experts have come in for some bad press in academia, but also in international and humanitarian response, because they've assumed the superiority of abstracted or decontextualized knowledge. And if higher education and academic expertise is to properly respond to local contexts and build local resilience, it does need to adopt some humility, to teach learning through reflection and debate, and to include empirical work where solutions are co-constructed and trialed with community groups. And this means participatory approaches that value local knowledge, opportunities for students to learn experientially, but also for students to see local service as equally important to highly paid and high status jobs. And this has not been part of the narrative of neoliberalism, which has prized personal ambition over notions of social justice. But with increasing aid cuts, teachers and lecturers have often become frontline responders in many crisis and conflict settings. Universities have supported displaced people, have set up peace hubs to deliver medical care, water retention, soil remediation, trauma healing, and the provision of nutritious food. So in crisis contexts, such partnerships can, if they're properly embedded, make an ultimate difference, not only to resilience, but also to people's survival.
Thank you. I mean, really, like experiential learning and the idea of co-constructing the solution, that's so profound. And I mean, that beautifully reinforces that resilience is also collective, and that learning ecosystems, it extends far beyond the classroom, right? That also brings us towards a close, but I would like to invite each one of you to offer one closing thought, a short but powerful reflection. So if you could implement one innovation tomorrow to make education more resilient, what would it be and why? I mean, just a brief insight from each one of you, like a takeaway gift for our audience. Alice.
Thank you. So I'm going to go back to my research infrastructure roots and say a magic wand thing tomorrow would be to develop a completely equitable and inclusive open research infrastructure that is funded in a way that's sustainable and that everybody can use. I think actually we have a lot of the building blocks for that. So maybe a more realistic innovation for implementation tomorrow would be to get people actually using the research infrastructure that we already have in a more consistent and equitable way.
Catherine.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't say the why, did I? And the why is because I think that if we have a solid research infrastructure so that the research that's being conducted and then communicated and disseminated around the world can be really relied on and accessed by and understood by, and the provenance is clear, then that will benefit everyone, maybe not so much at the school level, but certainly at the university level and beyond.
Okay, thank you. Catherine?
So mine would be meet young people where they are. So support has got to be built around the learner's context, and we've heard from Maxwell around what's happening in Hong Kong, which I have to say have been really revealing. But it's not just about how that learner tips up to school or to university. It's about their home life, financial pressures, cultural background, and we still try to put learners through the sausage machine. Let's be flexible, let's be relevant, let's be accessible, instead of trying to get young people to fit into rigid expectations. And can I have another? Because my second, very quickly, is we can't be what we can't see. So making sure that universities are, they're places that widen access to learning, that are rooted in their communities, and that we are, creating places where young people, whatever their background, feel that they do belong.
Thank you so much, Maxwell.
Thank you. I think it's about a well-established innovation ecosystem. From my point of view, that ecosystem is just like the habitat that there is a scholar, teachers, school sponsoring parties, government, external parties, that even a business enterprise, NGO. Right now, Hong Kong, there is one organization that try to run this kind of ecosystem. Although it is very immature at this stage, but we can see that they try to stir many innovation in school right now. And then we can see more and more teachers try to adapt new pedagogy strategies, and it's quite enlightening for me. And then I really like that. So from my point of view, it's about innovation ecosystem. Yeah.
Yes, innovation ecosystem. Juliet.
I'm going to go back to where you started, Abby, with connection, hope, and resistance, to link education with the core issues that we're facing globally and locally, to provide opportunities for students to build local and global connections and networks, and then to incorporate strategies for peace building and problem-based learning.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. What a rich and inspiring set of closing vision. Thank you for those thoughtful insights. So we do have time for a couple of questions. Gabi, is there any question in the chat box?
Right, thank you. Thank you all so much. That was such an interesting session. I think that the passion from all of you for kind of furthering equitable education is really come across. So thank you. Yeah, we've got a couple of questions. I know we are limited on time, so I think the one that I would kind of pick is with all the technological resources at our fingertips and being very globally connected, what is still a major challenge in bridging the gap between the current and potential higher education students from equity backgrounds in non-conflict countries and areas, and those that are coming from more privileged backgrounds? Yeah, Abby, I don't know if there's anyone in particular you'd like to direct that question to.
Okay. Anyone would like to comment? Catherine?
Yeah, I think I would just return to some of the earlier answers that I've given. All the technology in the world can't help a young person or a learner feel safe, feel included, feel like they belong. So until we've got access, equitable access to digital resources, then we can't, we mustn't rely on that. But we've got to make sure that our learners are ready to learn, and that comes back to not just giving academic support. It's about supporting the whole individual, and recognizing that they come to us with different backgrounds, different stories, and recognizing and including them in the work that we do.
And I mean, I can also probably, if there is one takeaway from this conversation, I can say that education survives because, not because it is protected, but because it adapts. So innovation alone will not save the education, but innovation with a purpose, with equity, collaboration, and courage will. So I leave you with a quote that feels fitting, that education is not preparation for life. Everyone knows actually this quote from John Dewey. It's a very common one, but it's so close to my heart. It's not the preparation for life, it is the life itself. So let us continue not only to defend education, but to reimagine it boldly, inclusively, and together. And Gabi, back to you.
Brilliant. Thank you all so much. I think that's a perfect sentiment to wrap up on. So thank you so much. And again, thank you so much to all the panelists today, and for everyone attending, and of course anyone watching back the video. So I will pass over to Josh in the background here to end the session. But thank you all so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to our remarkable panelists and all of you joining us today.
Thanks for moderating.